Well, the debate over another stimulus package has been heating up since Obama advisor Laura Tyson's comments earlier this week. One man who's been saying the stimulus wasn't big enough from the get-go is James Galbraith. He is professor of economics at the University of Texas, also author of the book The Predator State, and former executive director of the Joint Economic Committee of Congress. And he joins us now from D.C. to discuss whether throwing more money at the problem now will help. And is that the answer, Professor? I mean, we had a $787 billion package passed in February. Is it really the answer to throw more money in this?
Well, what the Congress did in February was never going to be enough to fully offset the violence of the slump that was occurring at that time. It was about as much as you could get in that political climate. And the problem now is to find things that can be done that will hit the economy quickly and that will relieve specific problems that are causing hanging up a stabilization and recovery now. And that in particular would be the crisis of the states and the localities, the fiscal crisis of all the lower levels of government. If you could do something that would relieve that and stop cuts in crucial public services, you could do something useful and something quite quickly.
But, I mean, is it so much, you know, the amount of money as it is the fact of the matter is we've had about, I think, $57 billion or so already released and not much of it doing any good right now?
Well, it is doing $57 billion worth of good. The problem is that when you try to do good as well as doing well, that is, when you try to make the projects useful, it takes more time. And of course, that's, you know, there are trade-offs one way and another. What you need to do is to find something, as I say, that can affect the economy quite quickly and stop the counterproductive addition to the problems that are occurring right now.
Professor, it's Deirdre here. Versus spending more money in a stimulus package, what about tackling health care?
Well, tackling health care and particularly getting all of the people who are who don't have insurance insured would be a very useful thing to do. One thing, a simple way of doing this, and obviously it's not the way we're going to go, would be to expand Medicare coverage to people age 55 and over, and that would allow a great many workers who would be willing to retire to do so, but who aren't willing to do so because they can't forego their health insurance. That would be a useful step, but it is not a measure. In general, health insurance is not a measure that's going to bring on economic recovery.
So you wouldn't rather see money spent in a more specific way? You just think more money needs to be pumped into the system?
It's clear that the amount of money that was put into the system in February was never going to be enough. And it's also clear that the specific measures that were taken are moving too slowly and are not the right kind to prevent continued cutbacks at the state and local government level. So, in fact, we have money for repairing sidewalks and repainting swimming pools, but we don't have money to pay teachers or to keep the major states from putting their public servants on furlough or issuing IOUs. That's, as I say, completely counterproductive.
Professor, you know, we're all talking about another stimulus, primarily because of Laura Tyson's comments earlier this week. And I just wonder, in many ways, if we're just wasting a whole lot of breath. Is it just an academic exercise? Because is there really political will now, at this moment when the economy looks to be recovering, to put in more money?
Well, I think right now there's a kind of general anxiety about whether the economy is going to recover. It's certainly not going to recover as quickly as the forecasters, the optimists in January thought it would. On the other hand, it has stabilized, and there is a lot of money still in the pipeline. So there's, I think, considerable amount of uncertainty over that. I think it is productive to be talking about what the next round of policy interventions needs to be. So I'm always an optimist about you know, getting new ideas into the pipeline.
You are indeed, and you've talked about that quite a bit. Okay, very quickly, Professor, because you're going to be testifying before the House Financial Services Committee later today, talking about Fed role and the expansion of Fed powers. What do you plan on telling them?
Well, the question before the subcommittee is, should the Fed be given the role of systemic risk regulator? And I have a considerable amount of skepticism about that. I think if you're going to examine large financial institutions who have not previously been regulated, that should be the province of an agency that does that as a first priority, specifically the FDIC, which has the best record in the crisis so far.
Okay, Professor, thanks so much for joining us. That was Professor James Galbraith, who is, again, going to be in Washington, or is in Washington, testifying before the subcommittee on Congress.